Book Club for Movies. Everybody, it's October. Oh, jeez, it's November.
Well,
I also don't... Okay, did you tune in for Tuesday?
yeah.
We did it without an agenda, and I don't have an agenda technically for this one, too. Typically, we need less of an agenda for this show because we just got notes and notes on notes about the movies.
Yeah.
But I certainly need one to tell what the date's going to be on Thursday.
It's going to be the first.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does.
It's November 1st here at Book Club for Movies. I'm Ryan Miller, and he might be dead. It's Matt Amberg.
I thought you would say The Walking Dead.
No, that's
because then it's unrelated.
Trademarked. Yeah, don't. Although I think they're looking for a new front man.
Hey, that's right. They call me Maddie Lincoln. What's going on?
Do you feel any better than you did a couple minutes ago?
No. I still have a throat thing, and we'll see how that goes.
Speaking of throat things.
All right.
Welcome back to October Ween, everybody. The last week of the Ween. Are you ready for this?
I am ready for this.
We have watched a Halloween type movie every week and talked about it. This week we're doing 3.
It's true.
The 3, quite possibly. And upon watching them, you can talk to us through Twitter, Facebook, and or email.
Or Discord.
Especially this week for the Dead Trilogy, Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Living Dead?
Just
the
Dawn
right
of the
order,
Dead.
And Day of the Dead. No, wait, it's not Dawn of the Living Dead. Dawn of the Dead?
That's correct.
Okay, and Day of the Dead.
Yes.
Matt, I've heard you have some, it doesn't even make sense to me physics-wise, combo synopsis of sorts for this?
Yes.
Okay, it's dubious.
All right.
Pull this off.
We're going to do things a little different here this week.
Right.
We have 3 movies, and they all go together. It began at night and continued until dawn. When the day finally happened, the damage had been done and we were too far gone. When the corpses of the most recently deceased are reanimated and begin growing in numbers over time as the people they kill get up and kill, 3 distinct groups in 3 separate decades continue to fight for their survival from the dead. Dawn of the Dead, my favorite one of the 3. I'll be honest with you right off the bat. Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead. 3 films, all directed by George A. Romero, all written by George A. Romero. Night of the Living Dead, starring Judith O'Dea, Dwayne Jones, Carl Hardman. Dawn of the Dead, starring Galen Ross, Ken Foree, David M.G., and Scott Reiniger. And Day of the Dead, starring Laurie Cardill, Harry Alexander, Joseph Pilato, and Jareth Conroy. Let's go. Let's talk about him however you want to. You got the floor, Mr. Ryan Miller.
I'm glad you asked. So this is my idea. Ready? This live. Here we go. Normally we do something of a chronology with these movies as we talk about them, and I think it serves both our discussion of the themes and characters and whatnot. I don't think that's going to serve us terribly well for this, especially doing a trilogy as a whole, but I think as we speak of them individually, and I think we do go chronologically by movie,
100%.
I don't think we necessarily need to break down the movie into beats.
No.
We can where it serves us or where it serves what our comments might be.
Okay.
But for the most part, I think it'll help us get through if we just kind of treat it almost like the rest of the show where we're talking more about impressions than we are plot.
I am
and stuff like
impressed.
that. Okay, you into that?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. See, it all works out. Before we get there, though, I think you've already started with my first question, which was going to be how these movies are related. And I'll be honest, and if you want to know why, go back and listen to Tuesday's show. I didn't have a whole lot of prep time. I did watch the movies. I do have notes on all of them. I didn't get to the Wikipedias because I wanted to find out how these movies are related. I know they're a trilogy of sorts, but they're not, like, Romero even did movies in between, or did things in between these movies, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so this isn't necessarily, like, they're related and they are accepted as a trilogy, but not necessarily as sequels or...
No, they're sequels.
Okay, well, all right.
These all take place...
They take place in the same universe, but you're not seeing, like, shared characters or anything like that.
No, there are no shared characters, but they are all very much so in the same universe because they're the evolution of one to the other to the other. That's and even further on, you get to Survival of Land of the Dead. It's the 4th one, which I actually really like. It's not really everybody's favorite, but I like it. And the other thing you see throughout the movies, which we'll touch on later on.
Keep touching.
But there is an advancement of all these things, and not only is it becoming less and less likely humanity is going to survive because the numbers are getting to a point where they are outnumbering the living. So, and then along with that, the other thing is that these zombies are also evolving. And we see that from the very first movie all the way up until
right.
Day of the Dead. Day of the Dead is the most stark attention to it, obviously.
I was wondering if that was going to be intentional. So, okay, that makes sense.
It was definitely intentional. So you see it in the sequel. You see it in Dawn of the Dead, where the zombies get a little more intelligent.
Okay. So let's start with Night of the Living Dead then.
Yes,
the
let's.
first one, in fact.
Written by George Romero and John Russo. Starring the great Judith O'Dea, Dwayne Jones, and Carl Hardman.
And maybe you can fill in the Wikipedia, as it were, where appropriate.
I'll try. I don't. My brain is fried for these, so I will try my best.
I'm sure you'll do great. Night of the Living Dead, I've only seen once before, and apparently forgot most of it. Certainly didn't understand with it, didn't view it with a critical eye like I did this time. And thing about Night is how it begins, and the dialogue is completely laden with this idea of death, futility, waste, and even reuse.
Sure.
Refuse and reuse are the most pretentious terms I wrote down next to each other.
I like it.
But it's Barbara and her brother, and they're coming to, it actually starts out how Texas starts out. They're going to their father or grandfather's grave. They're in the cemetery, and they're having this talk, that is very much laden with all these terms and these themes. That doesn't necessarily carry on throughout. I would say that's just kind of a primer to get you in the mood for the more subtler things throughout the movie. Mm-hmm. But Night of the Living Dead is deliberate. It's low budget. It's kind of not even subtle in its subtleties, and is technically more about the human reaction, the human interaction, than it is really about the monsters, which is to say it is essentially the father of the zombie movie genre. Like top to bottom, it's all there, and it's kind of fun how much it is.
Sure, and I mean, all three of these they wear their themes like right on their sleeves. This one is very so clearly about bigotry. That's a huge part of it is racism, bigotry, and this is this has a lot of novel things going for it. In terms of, I think the fact that it was low budget, the fact that the budget was raised by George Romero and Richard Rubenstein, who would produce the rest of his movies. They raised it kind of the same way in that Kevin Smith style, where they went around, they asked people, they got as much as they could, they went to production companies, whoever they could get money from. And I think it actually serves this movie well, much like it does Chainsaw.
Oh, fantastically. Yeah,
because this is an exercise in less is more. You do get enough, especially for the time. You get a little bit of that gore stuff, but very, very minimally, and you only get it for a few moments outside, and nothing is really visible. Like, you don't really know what they're doing.
And in black and white, yeah, and it's a very contrasty movie in that. Like,
yeah,
this is post-color film too, right?
Oh yeah.
I'm guessing this was strictly a budgetary decision.
1968.
68, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, there's been color movies for a few years.
Yeah.
But it also it also goes back, and the movies also reflect their decades. So you go back to the 60s and you think about what this is touching on. It's touching on a whole bunch of white people surrounding one black man. The black man is one of the first black protagonists.
Right.
That was straight up a leading man.
Arguably the hero. Like, there's...
Oh, he is the hero. Ben is totally the hero.
He is, definitely, but the movie is careful with that. I mean, because, like I said, it is about the human drama, the human interaction a lot of the times. Mr. Cooper shows up at one point, and he's not as fun-loving as I've been led to believe on TV.
No.
It's kind of a bummer.
You don't hang with him.
No. In fact, they very expressly try not to at certain points.
Mm-hmm. And...
that interaction, though, between those two, like, yes, Ben comes out on top, but there's tension. There are moments where, they have competing. He's the hero, but he's not like freaking Superman or something.
No. He's a hero in the sense that, yeah, he's doing the right thing, but he's also very flawed, and he's not necessarily not thinking about himself. Superman does it selflessly. Ben still has he's still thinking about, he wants to survive, but he's willing to help,
Yeah. And it's all done within this zombie outbreak thing where you're like, okay, yeah, you might think he's being a little too forceful, or it's my way or the highway, but then you think, well, in this situation, wouldn't you be, or wouldn't you have to be, or wouldn't somebody have to be? And then this is what would happen if somebody like Mr. Cooper came into that situation, who also kind of feels like that, or recognizes that, but just doesn't actually have it in him. Like he is
Right.
all bluster, you know?
Yeah, well, and I mean, and you know, to go along with that, you put yourself in that situation. You have Mr. Cooper's downstairs with his wife and kid, desperately trying to keep them alive. He doesn't
Right.
know who to trust, you know. And again, there is the tension between him and Ben, and then you also have you have Barbara, who's panicking. She just watched her boy, or God, she just watched her brother get killed.
Yeah.
And
she panics for not even, like, I would say half of the first act, maybe the first act,
right,
and
well,
she's kind of just a vegetable.
And then she shuts down. She becomes like catatonic. And so you have this other person, but at the beginning, when Ben is trying to take control of things and get things going, she's a mess, you know, for a good reason, and he has to try and calm her down so that they're not, you know, bombarded by them, and it's the whole thing.
Yeah, and that's the core of the movie. Like, we will get into this, trust me, but it's a zombie film, but that's far from the subject, you know?
Yeah.
And this is the thing I mostly wanted to read about that I didn't get a chance to, so maybe you can further elaborate on it if you want to. But
I'll try.
It being about bigotry and racism, and that being kind of, you know, the greater theme of things in a movie, in a situation where 90% of the people that watch it are going to think, you know, B horror movie or zombies or something, you know, like that's not it really.
No, I think that this is a movie that fits the decade. It fits the time it came out, and yeah, it's got things to say. And now, especially now, I think they're probably a little more overt to us, because we're like, especially for me, I was hearing this before I really understood how the movie worked in the first place. And then after hearing it, you watch it and you go, well, obviously it's there, like it's on its sleeve. And then you find out that Romero was making a commentary. He always does. He was making a commentary on life in Pittsburgh and what he saw, and the things that were going around in America in the 60s. You know, the Klan was still big in the 60s, and
right,
and
civil rights, man.
Yeah, I mean that was all happening, and so Romero wrote about it from a perspective that he understood as best he could, and I think that people still went and saw it at the drive-in and they loved it. I mean, the movie did well for what it was,
and it is unquestionably great. Like, I loved it in spite of the low budgetness to it. Like, I do think it serves it. I also think it's completely forgivable when they've flub their lines at least 4 separate times in there, and they just keep that take in. You know, my favorite might even be one of the zombies who looks into the camera for a split second as he's eating some animal liver. You know, I don't know what it is.
Yeah,
it's all amazing, and probably because of the last 5 to 10 minutes in a lot of ways. They get hunkered down in a place. There is one moment where they make a mission to get the truck and it all goes wrong and people explode and die, but all of this happens, all of this drama and all of this interaction happens, and pretty much everybody dies. Barbara dies too, right? The girl? We're going to spoil all these movies, by the way.
Barbara lives.
Does she live?
Yeah,
I
because
only remember the Ben in the house at the end of the movie.
Yeah, Ben gets shot.
Ben does get shot, so that's the ending I completely forgot, man. I did not remember. But basically, after all of this,
Barbara gets away.
I don't remember her in those last final scenes, but
she gets eaten by she sees Johnny. She sees the
oh right. Yes, her brother.
She sees her brother, and then freaks out and she gets pulled away, and
which
right.
if you watch this, this is always useful, but put yourself in the shoes of an audience member of the 60s. Like, from the beginning of this movie, I knew the brother was going to come back at some point. I knew, like, all the twists you knew were going to happen. But imagine if you hadn't seen them in a bunch of movies already over the last 30 years.
Exactly.
Like, those are awesome freaking twists. The brother comes back. The daughter is a zombie.
Yeah.
You know, like, stuff you knew, but still.
Right, absolutely.
Anyways, so yes, Barbara is gone, and Ben's the only one left, and this roaming gang of militia is kind of clearing out all the zombies and gets to the house, and essentially Ben's home free, except that he goes to the window and they immediately shoot him because, I mean, he's either a zombie or he's a black guy. Like, they don't seem to make a big distinction between them. And the actual credit sequence, I think, is additionally informative because they're all just parading his body around like a trophy and all these still photos as they
Right.
pull him out. And
No, it's a great ending. I mean, it's a huge, like, if that's not an exclamation point on a movie,
Series.
about bigotry and racism, I don't know what else is.
Yeah. Do you have anything else about Night of the Living Dead?
No, I
Okay.
love the movie.
Then comes Dawn of the Dead.
Dawn of the Dead. Love it.
We are 10 years later, looks like 1978.
Yep.
And this is the one that starts out with several cops, one of them just going to town on a tenement full of zombies.
Yes.
Just indiscriminately killing. Like, you could imagine there would be just a number of Bens in there somewhere that they would have killed on accident because they don't care,
Well, I mean, it's okay. So first, the movie starts off in a newsroom where the
Sure.
the zombies are beginning to take over. They haven't quite yet, but they're at that point where rescue stations are being like they're being overrun, and the ones that are on the radio are on the ones that are on the TV are old and they shouldn't be used, and so they're sending people to their death, and you still have people that are worried about ratings and money. So the world hasn't quite gone to pot yet, but we're met with Fran, who works at the radio or the TV station as a producer. Her boyfriend, who is the helicopter pilot,
Flyboy.
the flyboy,
as they do.
Yeah. And then once we kind of met them, we're also introduced to one of Flyboy's friends who is in the SWAT team, and we're transported to that moment where there's a whole mess of SWAT right outside of a tenement building. One of the guys is obscenely racist and is just calling out, waiting for a specific guy to come out so that they can kill him. We're never given the exact reason why they're there, but it turns into they were barricaded in there because all of the dead of the families, in some way they were put into the basement. And they were guarding the basement because they wanted to make sure the dead were given their last rites, and that became a huge thing. And
okay, totally missed all that.
And the one guy, or the big racist dude, he is straight up killing indiscriminately. He is the one that I love the effect. It's one of my favorite effects ever. Is the head explosion with the shotgun.
Right as he opens the door.
Yeah, guy is not a zombie. He was her.
Oh.
He was just a husband.
Sure.
And then he goes in and he's shooting all the people in that other room. They weren't zombies. That's why you have Peter be the one who says, like, none of the other guys want to stop him. That's why Peter's like, we just got to put him down because he's killing everything.
Did Peter take him down or Roger?
No, Peter takes him down.
Okay.
Peter takes him down.
That in any event, that's how Peter and Roger meet, I guess. Two members of the SWAT team that end up on the helicopter with the two first, Flyboy and his girlfriend that you mentioned.
Yep.
And those are our characters for the duration of this film.
Yeah.
It's longer than any of the others.
Yes, by a pretty decent amount too, at least half an hour.
20 to 30 minutes at least,
Yeah.
depending on what you might cut. And
Right.
considering Day of the Dead is, I think, 20 minutes shorter, I might cut 20 minutes.
Sure.
But they pretty early on walk through. In fact, I want to say it's when Peter and Roger, the two SWAT guys, meet pretty early on. A priest walks by, a one-legged priest, and drops the line, "When the dead walk, we must stop the killing or lose the war."
Right.
So that's kind of the thread that takes you throughout the rest of the movie. And it's more embodied in Roger and Peter, and that's probably smart. I like the buddy copness about them for probably the entire movie. I felt it when Roger didn't make it.
Yeah.
And that was believable and enjoyable. My only complaint, and then we can just go into all the good stuff, is that it seemed to take kind of a long time. They end up in a mall.
The Monroeville Mall.
And maybe you can explain to me, they left on the helicopter, and it's kind of a great moment because they talk to another weirdo, and they're like, "Where are you going?" He's like, "I don't know, the island." He's like, "What island?" He's like, "I don't know, any island.
Any
They
island.
can't get there, right?" Yeah. And they're like, "Where are you going?" He's like, "I don't know, up."
And I like that. Hey, you guys got any cigarettes? No. And then as soon as they fly up in the air, all of them are
Right,
lighting
yeah,
up
they light
cigarettes.
It's a great moment, and I like that they end up at the mall because there are moments it's full of zombies, and this is kind of where you find out a little bit, evolutionarily speaking, that zombies have some kind amount of memory left. Or, I mean, he's making a commentary, years before Shaun of the Dead did, that we might be the real zombies. In fact, no, they're not even making a commentary. That line is in the second movie. They're us, that's all.
And this is, by the way, this is one of the things that Zack Snyder remake just misses. It just totally misses the fact that it's a social commentary, because that movie is just the movie for being, it has touches in it a little bit, but it never, like, it's not as overt, I guess. And maybe I feel like it just doesn't quite hit it. This one is totally about consumerism. One of them even says, Flyboy even said, like, why are they here? And one of them says back to him, memory, something that was important to them at a different time. Like, and it's, it's a subtle way of I think Romero has a good way of doing it, where it's a subtle way of throwing things out there.
And I'm sure it was one of the first times it was ever done. And it's accompanied by this great moment where they turn the mall back on. So all the rides start going, the fountain starts going, and the escalators start going, and the zombies are all completely, weirded out or stumbling over it and stuff like that. The music comes back on, so there's this muzak kind of going throughout.
The goblins.
And it creates a really great moment. Like it was, I loved, it might be my favorite moment from the film, except that they use it a lot and it keeps going, and I think it kind of gets overused by the end.
That's fair. I think that the purpose that he had with that, and this is actually, so this is another interesting conversation. What version of this did you watch?
I have no idea.
I'm guessing the theatrical version. So the theatrical,
1 hour 40, I think. No, 2 hours.
2 hours 7 minutes. About
Right.
So that's the theatrical cut. Okay, there are like 4 different versions of this movie. There's one that is longer. The shorter one, the one that you would probably like. Story consultant and also one of the composers did some of the music with the Goblins. Dario Argento has a cut of the movie called Zombie that he did.
I saw his name.
He
credits
script consultant, and he also, I think he was a producer, and he also did music with Goblin as the Goblins in this one. So there are different cuts of it, and the zombie cut that he did for Italy is it's a different movie. There are cut scenes out of it, but then it's also a little bit, I think it's shorter even.
Well, I mean, if I had to cut anything, it would be a little bit of they do kind of overdo the consumerism with the zombies in the mall and the music and a little bit. There's also, the movie gets into kind of showing the day-to-day, which I have liked before, and I think the Walking Dead, go back to that, has excelled at in the past. I'm not sure if it's used to great effect here, unless that effect is to bore me a little bit, which might be. That's effective in its own right, but it's not necessarily enjoyable to watch in every instance. Like it actually becomes The Last Man on Earth for a few, like where he's, if you haven't seen that amazing Will Forte show, it's filled with all these great moments where what would you do if you're the last man on earth? Well, you would do all the stuff, and a lot of the stuff that they do in this mall, everything's free, money doesn't matter, like all this stuff. There's a little bit of that too that I think could have been cut.
They don't poop in the pool.
They don't.
I understand that, and actually I know a lot of people that have that same criticism of the movie. It doesn't actually bother me because I like, there's something about the way it's done and the characters, and Ken Foree especially, who's he's had he's had the career since, like, he's the one that's been like in tons of movies.
And he carries the movie in a lot of, like, he's
he definitely
the protagonist.
does. Yeah, no, and he's definitely he's the same. He's similar to Ben in that he's definitely thinking about himself, but he's also thinking about other people, and he grows like that. But he is unlike Ben. He is prepared for this stuff, and he can take care of himself, and he is not afraid to face things head on.
And that part's cool too. Like, especially in their buddy cop movie-ness, like, they are a good team. Like, it's fun seeing them cut through the zombies and banter back and forth for the most part,
Right. Yeah. But I also like the contrast that occurs after Roger is dead, because then it becomes, not only is it the third wheel, who is also the one that is the most experienced, the one who has the best chance of helping them survive, but he's also the one that lost his friend. He's now by himself totally because he's actually alone. He doesn't have a, so he has this weird situation going where he's kind of he makes them dinner and he leaves one night and he just gets drunk and is thinking about, and I think it's great. And yeah, I mean, I understand where you're at with some of the other stuff. It just, for me, it works because it is, I think it's necessary to see you have like a buildup of these people. They get this huge victory. They're able to, yes, they have one of their members gets hurt and he's going to die. But for right now, they've got that victory. They own the mall and they can have fun. And then you see this rapid deterioration. And yeah, I mean, it's slower plotting than you like, but you see this deterioration of all of them. And when it comes down to the very end, you have your explosive finale, which again, I love as a finale. I love that you have a band of raiders that are bikers that are going
Tom Savini,
the ultimate machete himself. You have all these
when he came on screen, I'm like, why does that guy look familiar? Oh, because I've seen him at PAX.
Yeah, because it's Tom Savini. I love those sequences too, like the machete to the head. This is a movie that part of the reason I love it. There are two main reasons I love this. Number one, it was one of these movies where I really got to love special effects. Like I really fell in love with them. Because I loved how it looked. I love that. Yeah, you could totally tell that like when she bites the cheek and the skin comes off that it's rubbery, and you could see like when he cuts into the hand that it's really cheesy and all that. But then there were those effects like the zombie that stands up on the crate and gets his head chopped off by the helicopter blades, and
half of his head chopped off, like
the top of it. Yeah, he's got a flat top now. And some of the makeup, like I love all that stuff. And yeah, so you get to the end of this movie and these bikers try to contact them through the radio. They decide to break in. And yet in another pointed statement, Peter says, just let them in, because as soon as they break in, there's going to be thousands of those things coming after them. But you get this great moment where you've got two men against this whole group of bikers, because one of them Flyboy decides this is ours. He wants to get selfish about it. Yeah. And also I think something that comes out in that moment is that not only is he being selfish about it, but I think he's also showing a great example of that character being not only wound tight, but clearly to a point pent up, because he's been stuck. He's a flyboy. He's meant to be outside, and he's been stuck inside. Sure. And so he explodes in the stupidest way possible by shooting at bikers, and then in the dumbest way possible again, he ends up turning into a zombie because he makes poor decisions one after the other, which he does throughout the whole movie.
Humanity is on display in all sorts of different ways, and I think we'll get back to that with overall thoughts. And I don't want to say that this movie isn't without great moments. There are definitely, like, there's a moment where the two men leave and she is left in the department store, which has been kind of a base station of sorts that they make supply runs to and stuff like that, where they leave and she kind of sits down and a zombie comes up on her and also kind of sits. He's wearing a baseball player's uniform and always also kind of comes down and sits, and they just kind of look at each other through the mirror and it just lays on him for, a couple seconds, and that's it. That's a cool moment. That's
a great moment.
Something that maybe could have been built out in a different way or spoke to me more than extended sequences of cleaning up zombies, which is another one that they might have been able to cut or make shorter, or, day-to-day life stuff. But I will also give you that scene that made, because there is a moment towards the end of all that where she's putting on makeup in the mirror, like a lot of makeup, and she kind of looks at herself like, is this it? And that is totally the point to all of that. Like, they can do whatever they want, this is the life, but it's not. It's the life that's left type
right,
thing.
Exactly.
So yes, sure, be right about something. Anything else about Dawn of the Dead before we move on?
You like trivia, so I'll give you a trivial fact here.
Do it.
So I'll give you two of them. One, the mall is the Monroeville Mall, still standing. You can go visit it.
Really?
Yeah. And actually, the Monroeville Mall is also where they shot Mallrats, because
no kidding.
If I remember correctly, yeah, I think he specifically went out for that mall. I could be wrong about that though. I could be way wrong. I don't.
I wouldn't
I
put it past
feel like
Kevin
I
Smith.
feel like I read that. But the other fun like weird thing, conflicting reports about this. There have been people that said yes, this was actually done and shot, and there have been people that said no, we never did it. We talked about it, and depending on which camp you sit in, if it exists, it's a bummer. We'll never see it. If it never happened, it's a bummer. It was never put to film. So supposedly, Romero did an alternate ending to the movie where,
the ending I also didn't like. Don't let me forget.
yeah, that's fine. So the alternate ending, I think, would have been a better ending. So in the alternate ending, and you can see it where it starts, and then you can see how it does not finish out, which is why I think it was filmed. And I believe Savini is the one who said, no, we shot it because I built the effect for it. So the zombies finally get into the storeroom, and yeah, and I know why you don't like it. You totally don't like it for he totally gets surrounded, and then there's like the karate chop noises and the really swelling.
She is on the helicopter, yes, ready to fly away, and he is in a room, ostensibly having given up, about to either suicide by himself or just by letting the zombies get him. And then, because he's been torn down, he's done with it all. He doesn't want to live anymore. And yes, he finds his courage and also his theme music from the A-Team.
So funny.
Beats his way to the helicopter and goes up. Yes,
I love the sound effects. But okay, so in the alternate cut, and actually in this cut, she still does this. Fran opens the helicopter door, sticks her head out, and looks and waits to see if Peter's coming, and then he doesn't come, and so she decides, I've got to take off. And right as she's taking off, that's when Peter decides, I'm going to make the decision. She comes down, he jumps in, and that's that. So that's how the movie ends. The alternate cut, she pops her head out, and she hears the gunshot. Peter kills himself, and she's distraught, so she just sticks her head into the helicopter fan and kills herself.
Okay.
That would have been a better ending.
Number one, yes, better than the one that was in there, but maybe not as good as she leaves and he finds his courage, but she's already gone.
Yeah, which I mean would have been the obvious thing.
Yeah,
but,
I guess. But
so
okay,
here is the we got to the end. I'm going to explain to you why. The other reason I gave you one reason why I love Dawn of the Dead. The one is the effects.
All right.
The other reason is that this was one of those movies. It's sentimental. My dad he loved this movie.
You're gonna pull. All right.
He loved the movie. He showed it when he was a theater manager, and he was so fond of the movie and loved it so much. When he showed it to me, he was so excited to show it to me, and I was so excited to watch it and seeing all the the blood and the color of the zombies and the biting and all that stuff. And it was just, it was number one. It was love at first sight in terms of so many things in movies that exist now. But it's sentimental because of my dad. So
all right, well, you win again, Matt's dad.
Yeah, that's right. Marky Mark. R.I.P.
Day of the Dead.
Day of the Dead.
And I thought maybe at the beginning, maybe the one that had the least to offer.
Nope.
And was pretty proven wrong.
Yeah. So this one's funny because I'm going to get right out in front of this. This is the one that people seem to like the least. It's also the one I think people misunderstand the most.
Huh. Well, maybe I'm one of them. That's why I do like it. I don't know.
No, I think here's how this goes for me. Night of the Living Dead is the best of the three movies in terms of the way the movie was conceived and brought things about.
Impact, cultural importance. Yeah, sure.
Dawn of the Dead is the best movie, my favorite, because of the effects. It brought things up. It made a change, and it had the message, and it was overt, but it was still.
I can't win the argument, but disagree.
No, that's fine. But regardless, it's not. This isn't even the argument so much as it is. But Dawn of the Dead was the movie that was overt. It not only still touches on the bigotry at the very beginning. You get that. I mean, kind of throughout a little bit, but you also. You do get, it's still relevant to the decade. It was still relevant to the 70s, a lot of what goes on in there. But then Day of the Dead is, I think, the best movie as a film. Like, I think it's got the best script. I think it's the most well made. I think it's probably the most film of the three.
I think I'm with you on that one. And it's the goriest. It's the grisliest.
It is, yeah. It's also the most nihilistic of the three.
Yeah.
We'll
get to the end.
I'll explain why, because I think there's nihilism in the end, and I'll explain
sure.
why.
I mean, they're all nihilistic to varying degrees.
Well, I think the first one is nihilistic, but I don't think it's nihilistic. I think that one is. I don't think it isn't. I don't think it is, and I don't think it's nihilistic because I think that it's more a stark statement. There's no nihilism there. That was life.
Okay.
I
guess
think
that's what I meant by degrees as opposed to.
And I think Dawn of the Dead, I think that it's literally in that title where they're flying off into the sunset. They have hope. There is more over the horizon.
Dawn is by far. Well, shoot. Okay. We'll get to the ending.
But I think Day of the Dead actually has a pretty big touch of nihilism to it.
Okay, I guess okay.
We'll get
Day
there.
of the Dead brought the entire series together for me in a lot of different ways that were pretty great. At the outset, it is seemingly character driven like the other ones, and there's a scene pretty early on that pits them all against each other. Basically, you have a group of scientists against a group of military, and they have this uneasy truce as they try and study the zombies in some way to get to a goal, a differing set of goals depending on who you ask. And there's a scene pretty early on where they all meet up and they're all in the same room, and there's this girl scientist, there's this lead doctor, there's this lead military man, and there's kind of these removed, the helicopter pilot and his buddy. Like, they don't typically have a role beyond that. And pretty early on, we get them all in the same room together, hashing it all out. And it looks like we're, again, talking about the outbreak and what we're going to do to survive, essentially. But we're really seeing another instance of personalities at play, right? Where all of these movies excel. Like, this is the thing that they're doing. It's not the outbreak. It's not this singular situation. It's how the people react to it and to each other.
Yeah.
But I think what's different about this and what became apparent pretty early on is they're not necessarily arguing character traits, because Ben versus Mr. Cooper, very obviously strong personalities. I think in Dawn of the Dead, same thing. Those four people are strong personalities that carry us throughout. The two, Peter and Roger, more than Flyboy and his wife,
Fran,
take us through the movie as characters. Their actions are born of that.
Yeah.
With Day of the Dead, I started to see philosophies instead of characters, which I can't honestly say I did with the other ones. There are philosophies at play, and you might be able to reinterpret some of those movies. Maybe if I went back and watched them again, I could.
Sure.
But this movie specifically, Day of the Dead, one of them's trying to save the past, which is the girl. One of them's trying to assimilate the past, which is the doctor. He's literally studying the zombies, taking them apart, figuring out how to train them. That becomes his mantra. The military guys are trying to keep it alive, essentially, in their flawed nature, which we'll get more into. And then the helicopter pilots are essentially trying to bury it. They're trying to forget about it. So you have at least 4 dueling banjos in this movie. And it bears out. Like, the way they end up coming together and playing off of each other and falling apart is more telling and I think more tightly woven than any of the other films, which I think is probably what you were talking about.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that the one of the overt things here is, and you touched on it already, is this is a movie about, like, legitimately they've all kind of always been about, there's some level of diversity there, but this one's actually about diversity of thought.
Yes,
diversity of philosophy, and it's about tolerance, and it's about classes. It's class. Like, this whole thing is class warfare.
Sure, very much so. And there's some twists and turns with it. I think one of the most interesting characters is the doctor.
Oh yeah,
because his philosophy is very much his is given more weight than the protagonist, which is the Sarah, who essentially wants to find a cure. That's basically her thing. She wants to save the past, as it were. And what happens is that the doctor is given these lines like, "they're us." He's given lines that were in the previous movies that spoken by the previous protagonists in a lot of the cases.
Yeah.
So we are essentially led to believe that this guy has the answer. And he's also the guy that's covered in guts all the time. He's the guy that, she walks into his office and he shows her a bunch of desiccated corpses and what he's doing with them. And she's grossed out. But he's like, look what I'm doing. He's not fazed by it, right? So,
but he's going to the point where he's got a body on the table that is just a brain and a nerve stem.
right.
He's got a body on a table that turns it, like it wakes up, turns over, all its guts fall out.
But there was a point, and I think the movie portrays him like this, where you think he might be the guy with the right answer.
Well, sure, because he spends his entire portion of the movie trying to look at this in the most logical way, and it seems mad, but why not? It's the only, because his response to the whole thing is there is no cure. There's never going to be a cure, but we can maybe make them docile. We can change his goal is to, instead of creating a cure, he wants to make it so the zombies are no longer looking at us as a primary food source.
Yeah. And he's set up in perfect opposition to the military guys, who are unmistakably despicable. Like, they're the worst, They're homophobic, they're sexist, they're all of the above, right? They are those guys from those other movies in this movie. So the doctor's set up against them, and he's given these lines. Again, he's given the "they're us" line, which we get from other people in other movies. But he's also given. He also says to the army guy, "How do we set an example if we behave barbarically ourselves?" Right? He says, "If civility isn't rewarded, there's no use for it." So he's giving these kind of high-minded answers and ideals, even though he's the guts guy.
Right.
So there's a moment where you're like, okay, he's probably the one. The Sarah is portrayed a little bit histrionically, like she's not, like she might not have a good grip. She's going out with a dude that definitely doesn't have a good grip, one of the soldiers that's losing it quick.
Yeah.
And probably before we go too much further, we want to mention Bub, right?
Yeah, well, Bub is he's a big part of the movie.
He is the most domesticated zombie of the Doctor, Dr. Frankenstein. I don't know if he has a name beyond that. That's what they call him.
Yeah, they call him Frankenstein.
And he's the zombie that appears to be responding mostly to the Doctor's treatments, his idea that they can be domesticated in some way, that he can awaken some of their past memories and use that to their advantage. There's plenty of zombies strewn about that haven't been able to go that far. So there are, and maybe I'll just get into it, there are traces that the Doctor might not be the one with the answer, and then we find out that he's pretty much a psycho. He has.
They find a recording.
They find a recording. Yeah, a recorder. They find some more dissected bodies. Turns out he's been dissecting some of the soldiers that have died to kind of figure stuff out. And he's also been chopping them up to feed to Bub. And that's part of how he's been training him not to eat people, is to, give him a Walkman and then give him an arm.
And give him people. Yeah.
Yes, give him people. So they find that out, and the recorder is him speaking all weird about and talking about mom to Bub or something like that. I don't know. So we find out the Doctor is not the guy with the answers. In fact, he is maybe not as bad as the army guys, but he's definitely not our hero.
No, not at all.
Our heroes turned out are actually the helicopter pilot and his buddy, who they do have a scene with Sarah wherein they kind of state their point of view, where they just don't care about all. They're not involved with stuff, because that's her argument, is why don't you help? And they're like, we are not part of this. Don't involve us. We are just over here in our fake little world. They have created a, AstroTurf set with a beach backdrop inside of a trailer or something like that. And that's where they go to relax, stuff like that. They do end up being the heroes because they realize that they cannot play. It's the whole for evil to triumph, good men do nothing type thing. They realize that that's true, and they have to do something. So they take a side, and it's Sarah's side, and they basically try to start and escape the army men, who they do get the upper hand on. And why am I doing a breakdown of the story again?
I don't know.
Especially because what I really want to say, what really struck me in this movie, is we've spent, especially from an audience's point of view, 3 movies now, at least, probably more again, but within this trilogy, telling us that the zombies are bad. Or letting us believe that the zombies are bad, that they're the real bad guys, they're the threat. And in this third movie, and considering there have been additional movies, maybe it's done better. But this feels like a great capper to that, because we get Bub, we get a zombie who is essentially a good guy,
Yeah.
who is essentially there to say, after 3 movies of zombies being maligned, we get Bub, who's never been, the bad guy. The zombies have never been the bad guy. It's been the humans. It's been the stupid decisions they make. It's been the military guys who can't evolve past what probably caused the outbreak in the first place type thing,
I mean, they humanize Bub, and they humanize Bub in the right way by making him a
better human than the humans.
Exactly. That's the point, is that Bub is the better human than especially the general there, the captain, because, and you get that, you find that out immediately, that Bub is a better person than that person when Bub stands up, realizes that he's military, and tries to salute him. And, outside of the fact that the what is he? He's captain, right? The captain,
who knows?
the captain not only just wouldn't do it, even though it's, find out what happens. He's a coward, and he's all these things, and
he's despicable. Like I said, they're all the army
absolutely
guys are. I think that's what's so interesting, is because these movies are made to be like gross, right? They audiences see them and they see the guts spilling out, and they're like, oh man, that is the worst. I can't even look at that. But then they see these characters in the army guys. Those are the things that I can't look at,
Right.
It's harder for me to watch those guys and what they do and how they treat people and how they treat Sarah than any of the guts I see on the screen,
Yeah. No, what's more disgusting, humans or zombies?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that's why Bub was important in the very least, because he's the one that's like, hey, not all zombies? No, that's not
no,
right.
people are people. People are people.
People are people. And maybe that's what we get into. Do you have anything specifically about Day of the Dead?
I want to get to this nihilism bit here for a moment.
Yeah, actually finish that up.
At
please.
the very
well, maybe that'll get into actually, because I had overall thoughts about all of them that I think that would fit in quite nicely. So
all right.
No. So go ahead. I'm saying.
Oh, okay. So I think that this is the movie where I think you're right. You've got all these different competing thoughts and things. And the movie ends with this, they're running to the helicopter. She opens the helicopter. And she had been delusional throughout. There had been moments of zombie hands coming after her and stuff. She opens up the helicopter door. She is
bad dreams.
She is yanked in. Then she wakes up immediately under the helicopter on an island, just like what they had in the in the thing. The nihilism for me comes here 2 different ways. One, they've straight up given up. We're gonna go to an island. We're done. Nothing. There's nothing better. Nothing's going to happen.
It's true. She has abandoned her philosophy.
But not even by her choice. She's forced to be there. She had no choice. She knocked out, whatever. I also think, in my personal opinion, I've always kind of read the movie this way, they're not even alive. Those are her last, I actually think that the zombie that comes out to get her in the helicopter was already there. And that's it. And I think that's why I have always thought of Dawn of the Dead or Day of the Dead as the most nihilistic and the most like outright ending. It's a given up. And I don't know that it was him saying that, but it feels like you get to a point where those characters that was that. And then when Land of the Dead shows up, I feel like that even falls further into it. Like you get even more nihilism with Land of the Dead.
That would make more sense, because if that's not true, it's the happiest ending of all the films, which I think makes less sense probably.
Well, yeah, and I just don't see they're in Florida, so sure, maybe they went to the Keys, and yeah, I guess that's an ending, but to me, that's just not what happened.
Because in a way, the least of what any of these movies have to say has to do with the ending, actually, if you think about it. It's kind of the least important part of all of them. With the exception of maybe Night of the Living Dead. And that's probably, again, like you said, the most important for a handful of reasons. But all this stuff is still there. I mean, the true enemy in all these, again, this has been done so often since that it's almost just goes without saying, is man, are the humans. They are the real ugly in all of these gut-filled movies.
Yeah.
In a way, to me, it's also why they can't defeat possibly the simplest enemy ever. Now, in Day of the Dead, they are a little bit more aggressive, a little bit harder to handle, it seems like, and it's good to hear you mention there was an evolution or a planned evolution of sorts, perhaps. But and maybe it's a symptom of the low budgets. Even though they had bigger budgets for the other movies, they still couldn't hire enough people for me to look at it and be like, they could probably shoot every single one of those in the head with the bullets there, or stab some, and get the numbers down enough that there's not a threat. So anyway, but you forgive that.
I do.
Humans suck so bad and are the real threat here that it's not surprising that they can't take down possibly the easiest or most docile enemy possible. So I mean,
well, and again, it's called out in Dawn of the Dead, right? You get the priest who outright says, you outnumber them now, but soon enough, I think they outnumber you, because if you kill them, if you keep fighting the battle, you lose the war.
True.
Or whatever.
Yeah,
you keep killing each other. Right. You keep killing each other, and
we get the line from the doctor in Day of the Dead, who literally says that they outnumber us now. So
right.
So you buy some of that, but thematically speaking, I guess it made sense to me too, because especially after seeing all these movies back to back, you're like, hey, the stupid people aren't the zombies.
Right.
It's Mr. Cooper, who sees Ben in the very first movie with the gun defending zombies at the door and still thinks Ben is the threat.
Well, yeah,
still takes the gun and points it at him.
Sure.
Dummies.
Yeah. We are the problem. We are the Walking
Deserve to
Dead.
be eaten. Anyways. Hey, there's the nihilism. I found it.
You found it.
Found it. Hey, 20, 92, and 33 stars respectively. I just broke you.
All out of 20.
Okay, fair enough.
Worked out.
And that's it for Octoberween, everybody. We did.
Is it?
Wow.
Is it? I think we got one more horror movie in us.
I mean, we most certainly
we
do
started
and will,
late.
But I'm going to take a break for a while.
We started late, though. We should do one more.
We did. It's November, remember?
Right. We should do one more, though.
Okay. We'll do one more ever next year.
Okay. Fine. What are we watching next week?
Give me a different. What do you want to watch? What do you got in mind? What do you got?
Well, I was you brought it up, so I figured why not? Well, we might as well do it at the cap or do it all at the end. One of the greatest horror movies of all time, The Thing.
Oh, now you want to do The Thing?
Might as well. It's great. It wraps up. Up Octoberween.
Right.
It takes us right into the winter of our discontent.
All right, we're doing The Thing next week. Hey, you know what? That's fine. You've worn me down enough. We hadn't actually even talked about what movie we're gonna do, so I'm gonna take it.
Yeah. John Carpenter's The Thing. Hey, zerohitpoints.com if you like video games. Bookclubformovies.com if you like this show. Podcast at Book Club for Movies. What?
Nothing.
All right. Come back next week. Let us know what you're thinking, because it's The Thing. I gotta go. I'm already late. I gotta go.
Fair enough.
Bye.